How do we know that everything we see and experience didn't just pop into existence last Thursday? Why should we even ask this question? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the Least Professional channel on YouTube. How's everybody doing today? So today I wanted to talk a little bit about an idea I first heard about a few years ago called Last Thursdayism. The basic premise of Last Thursdayism is that the entire universe was created last Thursday, and everything that we see and know and every experience in our entire lives was just filled in but wasn't real before that day. Now this might sound like a strange idea, but the original intent was probably not what you might think. So in 1857, a man by the name of Philip Henry Goss published a book entitled Follows, where he argued that the age of the earth could not be determined using scientific means because God had created everything as it was, and so any evidence for the earth being older than a few thousand years was unreliable. At the time the book was published, the idea of a young earth was not taken seriously by most people. But in the 20th century, a movement around young earth creationism started to gain steam. Some members of this movement used Goss's book as a foundation for their ideas, expanding on it to include things like the problem of stars being so far away that much of the light that we see from them would have not been able to reach the earth over only a few thousand years. But as young earth creationism gained popularity, it also gained the attention from critics. One of those critics was a philosopher by the name of Bertrand Russell. Russell would posit his own hypothesis when discussing the reliability of memory that would come to be associated as an argument against young earth creationism. That argument was coined the 5-minute hypothesis. This simply said that it's possible, and I quote, that the world sprang into existence 5 minutes ago, exactly as it was, with a population that remembered a wholly unreal past. So beyond that, he continues, there is no logically necessary connection between events at different times. Therefore, nothing that is happening now or will happen in the future can disprove the hypothesis that the world began 5 minutes ago. Now, when Russell came up with this, his conclusion was pretty simple. We can't test this hypothesis, and therefore it warrants no further investigation. He says, I am not suggesting that the non-existence of the past should be entertained as a serious hypothesis. Like all skeptical hypotheses, it's logically tenable but uninteresting. Now that quote actually came from his book Analysis of Mind, published in 1921. So as an example, I could state that the universe was created at any point of my choosing, and say that it was just created as it is now, and there's nothing that you could do to refute that claim. But because it's not falsifiable, the idea shouldn't be taken as a serious explanation, because if we accept things that cannot be tested in a reliable way, just because they haven't or can't be proven wrong, we risk accepting any number of outrageous claims. So Russell's 5-minute hypothesis would gain steam with opponents of the young earth creationist movement, and would eventually become popularized as Last Thursdayism. The problem, as is so often the case, is that there are people who took this idea that was started to refute claims of a young earth on philosophical grounds and made it into their own thing. In some ways, it's been used more to make fun of a person for their sincerely held beliefs than to actually demonstrate the need for critical thinking. So, Last Thursdayism was a thought experiment, much like the simulation hypothesis that we covered last week. It's one of those philosophical arguments that we can't prove or disprove because we simply don't have any method of doing so. At the end of the day, we have to live in the reality that we have evidence for. Now, one interesting argument that I came across that was made against Last Thursdayism has to do with the criminal justice system. The argument was essentially that if the universe was actually created last Thursday, and all of the memories in history were just implanted in our heads, but never really happened, then everyone that's in jail for any crime should be let out on the understanding that they didn't actually commit any crime, because the crime itself was only a memory in the conscious minds of the entire population. This is a really interesting thought and would technically make sense because the whole reason the person is in prison is because they broke the rules of society. Speaking of breaking the rules of society, now I've got to get my train of thought back. So, if they didn't actually break those rules because nothing existed before last Thursday, then they shouldn't be in prison. Now, taking this one step further to the 5-minute hypothesis, no one should go to jail for any crime because nothing actually happened before 5 minutes ago, right? Following that train of thought to its logical conclusion, society as a whole shouldn't exist at all. Elected officials were never actually elected, and governments were never actually established. If Last Thursdayism were true, we would be technically living in a world with no friends, no family, no movie stars, no wealth. All the responsibilities of our actions go out the window completely. So that brings me to the purpose of this topic and ultimately my channel as a whole. While I do think that we should all be critical of our own beliefs and always be searching for answers, I also think it's entirely wrong to put someone down or make fun of them for their beliefs. Last Thursdayism has been used, along with many other arguments, to point to the absurdity of claims that are made, but also to make fun of those claims themselves and the people making the claims. A few years ago, when I first started looking into philosophy and religion and ghosts, I found so many channels on this platform that centered themselves around an idea or a personality that bordered on, or sometimes prided themselves on, making fun of those that they saw as not logical or wrong. I watched a lot of debates and other videos of people that were confronting each other on these kind of topics, where what could have been a discussion of ideas devolved into a shouting match or ad hominem attacks that left both sides just angry. All that those kind of arguments do is widen the rift between the people of different beliefs and views, and it stokes fires that don't really need to grow. Now, some of the topics that I have planned for the future have historically been divisive. While I will share my thoughts on every topic I cover, I also don't expect everyone that watches these videos to share my views or my beliefs. What I do expect is that when we differ on these subjects, we can have a healthy conversation, either down in the comments below or in the Discord server. Whether the topic is the existence of ghosts, cryptids, other paranormal occurrences, or something else entirely, I want to have the conversation in a positive manner. Personally, I know that I could be wrong about everything I believe, and if there's some piece of evidence I missed, I want to know about it. Now, the reason that I cover the topics that I've been covering over the past couple of weeks is partially because they're topics that interest me, partly because they're topics that you guys have requested or expressed an interest in, and partly because so much of this is laying the foundation for things that I want to cover going forward, going through 2022 especially. Showing my reasons for why I cover a particular topic in one way or another helps to get across the message and expand the way that we talk about things. When I cover something like a supposedly haunted location or some Ohio cryptid like the Grassman or the Loveland Frogman, I want to make sure that everyone knows what to expect and why I think something exists or doesn't exist, so that we can have conversations when you think that I'm wrong about something or if I miss an important piece of evidence. As a quick reminder, I'm going to be releasing the 200 plus subscriber Q&A video this Saturday. If you haven't yet, head over to the announcement video on the screen. I'll put that up right here. And ask me questions. You can submit questions about anything at all. It can be related to video topics, or it can just be about me in general, or like a couple of them about my my loving and adoring cat over here. So with that being said, as always, I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.